Welcome to the Nerd Journey Podcast. Our goal is to help you, the technology professional, accelerate your career progression, increase your job satisfaction, and be more effective in your existing role.
We want to bring listeners like you the career advice we wish we'd been given earlier in our careers.
I'm John White, at VJourneyman on Twitter, sharing co-host duties with Nick Cordy, at NetworkNerd_.
We're two former IT operations guys who have moved on to pre-sales roles with technology vendors. We have our opinions, but we also like to highlight the journeys of others and see what we can learn from them.
We'd also like to ask for your feedback to make this a conversation, not a one-way broadcast. Email us at nerdjourneypodcast@gmail.com or DM us at nerdjourney on Twitter. So come join us on our nerd journey.
Let's take a trip. Episode 322. What if the technical community that you're part of wasn't as supportive of all of its members like it could be? It might just mean you need to step away for a while. Kellyn Gorman knows exactly what that feels like. Kellyn is a multi-platform database professional with 25 years of experience in our industry, and she's also known as DBA Kevlar. If you missed part 1 of our discussion with Kellyn in episode 320, we talked about how she got into technology in the first place and eventually made her way into database administration. This all started with a serious health challenge in which Kellyn lost 9 years of memories. We talked about the strengths and weaknesses of being autistic and ADHD or ADHD and working in technology. We also talked about some strategies to protect yourself against perfectionism. In part 2 of our discussion with Kellyn in episode 321, we talked about the barriers most people have to creating public proof of work, and we got to hear why Kellyn started public speaking and how she progressed over time. Now she's doing keynotes. Kellyn gave some excellent tips in that episode of how to find the right manager for you and some great questions that you can ask to determine that. And we ended part 2 with a tale of 2 technical communities, the Oracle community and the Microsoft community. As we begin part 3 and the final installment of this trilogy of episodes, Kellyn will share the story of leaving and returning to the Oracle community. What was that like, and what did that mean to her? We also heard through the other 2 episodes that Kellyn and her husband both work in technology. They've done similar things over time and even worked at the same companies, but their experiences have been quite different. What do I mean by that? You'll have to find out here in a moment. And sometimes, even though you're the warrior, even though you're the advocate supporting women in tech, you need support and you need self-care. How does Kellyn get both of those things, making sure she cares for herself so that she can take care of the community she loves so much? Here we go with part 3 of our discussion with Kellyn Gorman. When you talked about the social anxiety and just forgetting the topics that you had prepared for, do you think that was because those settings didn't have enough women? Or was it just because it was a big social setting?
That's a whole nother topic where we could go on forever. Being a woman in tech, especially a data infra specialist like I am, I'm not on the analytics side. I am very large database. It's a very lonely place. I thought I was doing great. I was the cool girl. I was the girl with all the guys usually, and I was fine. And then 2011, a woman that I'd worked with at 2004 came back. I had hired her to work with me in 2011. I had forgotten what it was like to have another woman in the office with me. And it was great. And I didn't realize we communicated differently between each other. And we had a great interaction. It was so nice to have someone else there that I could go to lunch with, that I didn't have to worry about it all. And it sounds sad. I don't want that. I want to feel the same way about the guys that I work with. I love the guys, but it was different. And she was pretty much bullied out of the job. And I was angry. I was like, this is the last woman that leaves. I had looked into the history, and of the 8 women that I worked with in my career at that point, 5 of them had left tech. And so I scheduled lunches with them, sat down and talked with them, and found out they'd all left for all the same reasons when you got down to it. They'd all left because of the sheer loneliness, the isolation, the lack of collaboration, and sometimes bullying. And it was just really sad. And I didn't realize that I was often bullied, that I was often, isolated and everything else. And I said, we got to fix this. So I started doing women in tech programs within the Oracle community. I started most of them in Europe, K-Scope, that I'm going to do the keynote this year. I started their women in tech organizations back there,
That's awesome.
all of those. And we got the women at RMUG up to 22% from 7 when I left. We got a lot more women in tech in the ACE program. I started promoting women in tech. They're going to know this now. I figured out the trick to their documentation and then got sponsors. I would hand it to sponsors nobody would think of because they would expect me to promote women, but I'd find other aces. I need you to promote Michelle. I need you to promote Janice. I need you to promote Helly. And I'd get allies to help me out. People of color, same thing. They'd come to me and go, Kellyn, they're telling me that Danny isn't technical. You tell them, here's his blog. They better go read it. They didn't say this about somebody who wasn't of color. Go read it. I mean, I took this stuff on head on. They'd come back and go, she's not technical. Woman I'm talking about is now the lead speaker for AI in Oracle. Own it, Helly. Go. Yeah. Just took no prisoners. Absolutely took no prisoners. Did I get shot as the messenger? A lot. But I was like, worth it. I am Kevlar. I will be bulletproof as long as I can. And I was not taking no prisoners with this, that they had to move forward. And I will say the community for Oracle has grown a lot. Where before, as we were getting like sometimes uncomfortable conversations, emails, things like that, it was normal for us to be told, but isn't that kind of flattering? No, it's not. No, we don't like this. Please stop. Don't do this. Now they're more likely to be allies. Now they're more likely, don't do that too. That means they're growing too. And that's what we want. It always has to be based on education, not on persecution. And we focus on that. And I learned that very much from the Microsoft community. The Microsoft community is much farther ahead than the Oracle community on those situations. They police their own. When somebody gets out of hand, the guys are right there behind the women going, no, you will not do this. This is not good. They expect that equality, that inclusivity. And I think that's really essential that you see that growth. As long as there's growth, as long as you're moving forward, that's extremely important. That's kind of where I take this. And hopefully I answered that question. I may have rambled on, but yeah.
I think you answered it. If I recall from our earlier conversations, you sort of came full circle from starting in the Oracle community and having to walk away from it for a little while.
Yeah.
And then finding the Microsoft and then swinging back and breathing energy back into the Oracle community.
Well, I don't know if I'm there yet. I will say for women in tech, we call it the death by 1,000 pinpricks. It may be death by, 1,000 cuts, death by 1,000 small bullet dings. I am the messenger that got shot a lot. And at a certain point, I was like, I may be sitting there at about 899 cuts. We're getting a little high. I need to move back because I was very aware, and I feel this very deeply on the Microsoft side. I know who paved the way for us. I feel their pain when I see them. And I'm like, don't ever get to that point, Kellyn. Take care of yourself. So at a certain point, I stepped away from the Oracle community for a while and was like, this is not healthy. You're taking too many hits for too many people, and you need to go where you're safe and loved. And I am very safe and very loved in the Microsoft community. So I did that. And it really was helpful. What was interesting, and I'm going to try to do this without tears, is going back to Oracle Cloud World this year and people coming up to me that I was so happy to see. And I hadn't been back to Oracle Cloud World since 2019. Deep breath, Kellyn. And like Renee and Ludovico and Leighton and other people coming up to me and giving me hugs and saying, I couldn't be where I am without you. I'm getting emotional.
I love being judged by the people that I help. And,
yes.
And it's so powerful to hear people say that. So I absolutely understand having the emotional reaction.
I thought that no one remembered. I thought that no one cared. And I did sit outside the exhibitor area and cried with Renee. Felt like a total fool. I didn't care. But it was lovely to know that. After that, I was approached by a couple people, Jim Kropensky as well as Wayne Vansluz, and they both said, we have these events coming up. One was the Oracle Data and Analytics Conference. The other one was Kscope. And I've both been confirmed as the keynotes for those, for the Oracle event. I was just coming back into the Oracle community and I'm like, where am I going to apply? And I, had submitted talks to both of these events. And they said, we want you to be our keynote. We feel that you kind of got a raw deal with Oracle and we want to fix that. Those kind of approaches, you didn't even realize people noticed the hits you were taking, So that definitely has been really nice, really nice. Not only am I coming back into the Oracle community, but I'm coming back in a way that I've got keynotes. I have articles that are being published in a number of top magazines. I am able to contribute in a way that is very powerful, that it's those that may be naysayers, those that may, you joke about, the hater's going to hate. It allows you to move beyond that. I had this conversation with somebody the other day that they were having problems with the haters. And I said, don't ever even pull yourself down into that level. Always work up. Always stay up. Don't ever let them pull you down. And this allows me to go back into the Oracle community and not be pulled down by anybody, to be able to do the best that I can do and focus on that, because I was anxious about coming into the Oracle community again. Anxious about the challenges and those feelings of, you didn't feel good sometimes coming into that. What is going to be the uncomfortable situation at this event? A lot of events, for the Oracle community, they may not have code of conducts. They may be serving unlimited alcohol. That's where most of these situations would occur. There have been a couple times where I've walked away and went, I am in my 50s. This should not be happening anymore. It's not fun. And your whole brain, again, 25 channels are going, how do I get out of this without embarrassing this person, without embarrassing me? I want to make this as benign as possible. It's just not fun. And you just want to avoid that. And in the Microsoft community, they're very strict code of conducts. There are very high expectations and there are people looking out for each other. That makes a huge difference. That takes a huge weight off of people when you're there as a woman in tech. And I would love to see that at all communities. I don't think people understand how important that is. We're there to learn.
It's shocking to hear that there are events without codes of conduct. It feels like a baseline expectation.
I was so proud of Kscope. Somebody came to me and asked me about it, and I explained to them the importance of code of conduct, and they immediately implemented it into the Kscope conference, and I was so proud of them for doing that. It makes such a difference. We joke about it, but nobody wants the red card that you have inside your badge that says you violated the code of conduct.
Well,
Do not
sure.
get a red card,
Well, I think you highlighted something that maybe we haven't really thought about before, John, and that's if you're going to join a technical community, you've joined more than one.
We didn't talk about the DevOps community or, any DevOps or any of them, yeah.
That's true. But I guess I'm thinking of, if you want to join a technical community, you can approach it the same way as you did your potential jobs. Somebody on the inside, hey, how do you like this? As a woman in tech, how do you get treated? Do they have a code of conduct?
I am just now getting involved with the Postgres conference, those conferences and everything. And luckily, there's a lot of old Oracle and SQL Server people that are involved. They just asked me to send them, I'm sending them these stickers, and I don't know if you can read them, but it says, assume that she is technical and capable of breathing fire.
That's cool.
This is a saying that's gone around the Microsoft community for a very long time. But I think we almost need little pins that say that, just to keep us safe. It's really important. When I go to Oracle conferences, I told folks that if I walk into a conference and I'm here to interact with my technical community and talk to people about tech, and the only questions I receive are, how is your husband? Are you still living on the floating home? How are your kids? If I just get that over and over and over and over again, I wonder why I attended an event. This is with me speaking. This is happening. So I know it's happening to other women, and especially women that may be younger than me. It was not uncommon for me to speak at an event. I was a keynote at an event, and there were 3 women at the entire event counting me. It's insane when these kind of things happen. What was even more shocking is the weekend following that event, I went to a Develop It Girls event, and it was all women and one men. So there was like this huge shock value when you went to the next one. It's really interesting how the events are changed and how the interactions are and everything when you change up how inclusive or how different the attendance is for the people that are there.
And that change up, that really comes from the leaders, the board of directors, I guess, for the community in question. I wonder if someone should seek to talk to folks like that if they're looking to join a community.
And it's pretty complex too. Even for speaking for local events, there's been many times where the boards will say, we wanted more women speakers, and they didn't come out and put in their papers. They didn't submit anything. And that is another complex issue. When I was looking for authors on my first book that I was the lead author for, Enterprise Manager, I approached a couple different women that I really wanted on the book that really knew their stuff. And they were like, well, let me think on it. And then they kept coming back and they were like, well, I want to make sure that I can do this. And they wanted to make sure they were 110% sure they could do it. I want to make sure that I had everything. I had guys who barely knew how to spell Enterprise Manager. And they're like, I can do it. It was insane. And I know that my brain is wired more like most guys, where I'm one of those. I'll just jump in and I'll figure it out as I go. But most women aren't. They need to feel like they can really not just contribute, but succeed at it, and they're not letting anybody down. And it's so important for women in tech and anywhere really to stop being so hard on themselves and really jump in. You'll figure it out later. The women that do that really do as well or better than the guys around them. I mean, you gotta stop worrying so much. And I feel bad that I'm like going to women going, you got to stop worrying about that so much. But people don't tell us that. They're really second guessing us. We're taught to second guess ourselves from very early on. I mean, you think about it, little girls come over and go, this boy was bothering me today. Oh, he probably likes you. Well, he really bothered me. I don't like him. Well, do you think maybe you misunderstood him? I mean, we're taught from very early on to second guess ourselves. So to break ourselves out of that mold and just say, I'm going to do this and I'm not going to care what anybody else thinks, it's very hard. Very, very hard. I just learned really early on that most people were full of it and I shouldn't listen to them. So
that last comment is hilarious. The other parts of it are very, very sad.
Yeah. It's the truth, though. I would hear my daughter come home and say that. She's like, they said he had a crush on me. No, he doesn't. If he's mean to you, he doesn't like you. He doesn't like you, and that's bullying.
Well, yeah, I think that this is maybe a situation where we flip the script and say, yeah, but the output is bullying.
Yes.
So questioning the process that got to bullying is maybe not as important as the output.
Yeah.
Right? The behavior is not acceptable regardless of the motivations or the feelings that motivated it. I do like you're calling out the differences in personalities that are out there. The idea that somebody might say, well, here's a list of things that I feel like I need to accomplish or that I need to know before I'm worthy of being an author on a book or authoring a chapter. And it's the same thing with job applications too, right? I think that's maybe a little bit more well known as a lot of times women will look at a list of, skills that are being looked for.
Yes.
Or, responsibilities and say, well, I'm missing, 2 out of the 14, so I'm not going to apply. And whereas like some men will go like, well, I have 2 out of those 14. I'm probably the top candidate.
I'm proud of guys for being able to do that, but I want more women to do it. I want more women. I've helped a number of women renegotiate, 6-week severance packages, things like that. Or when they're actually looking at their resume and it's like, you've been a DBA for 18 years. You were not a mid-level DBA. You were a senior level DBA. You think? Yeah, I do. I do think you are. Coming back in and them saying, well, they offered me 4 weeks. No, you're worth 6. Get 6. I think it's important. And women are really good, by the way, at negotiating for other women. They should always bring another woman in because we will fight to the death for each other. Bring another woman in. Do it. People say we're not as good at negotiating for ourselves. We are very good at negotiating for each other. And I do think we just need to talk it through and we'll get ourselves all ramped up and we'll go for what we should. That's extremely important that women will kind of undercut what they're capable of doing. They've been told, don't be bossy. don't be brazen, it's not attractive. And we need to kind of give that up because it does hurt us in the real world. But I also think a lot of women are, they don't submit talks because they don't think anybody wants to hear what they've got to say. And a lot of women have a lot to contribute.
I'll make a book recommendation here, and you can tell me if you've read it or not. There's a book out there called Likeable Badass.
No, I haven't read it.
It is written from the point of view of a woman who has navigated this. Being a leader or a manager in any kind of organization, there's all these expectations of women, like it's a very gendered view. It's like the same behavior is viewed as, maybe positive for men and negative for women. So there's always the meta conversation is we need to fix that.
Yeah.
Right. Obviously that needs to change. And this is like maybe also a little bit more of well, here's how to mitigate that in the meantime. It's like, here's the behaviors.
Nice. My husband and I have a very unique working relationship that we've worked together 4 times. I mean, we started out working together in Microsoft. We were in the same exact role in the same team. We've been on the same groups together, part of the same groups, served on the same boards together. We are aware that, and this is a trick that we both did. He's written emails for me. We've written emails and submitted them under the different accounts to see what would happen. He's very aware, and I think that was something that was a little shocking to him, was how he could say things, but I couldn't. There were other times where he would know I was going to do better with some people. And there were other times where I'd be like, you need Tim. You need to send Tim in. These guys will do better with Tim. There was also these challenges of recognizing that DEI made me look a little better than him. And understanding that sometimes you push a little too far and need to have those hard conversations of saying, did you give that big stock bonus award because Kellyn looked cooler to give it to instead of Tim? Because Tim's just a white dude. My husband can't go to his boss and go, I need an ally. I need sponsorship to get my raise. I would automatically be given it. There are these challenges, these hard conversations that we have to have. Even though we could end the day and go, this is the first time where Kellyn and Tim have seen very equal, where they haven't had that in any other career. There were times where I kind of looked at it and went, but I'm leaving the company making more money because I look cooler to give that. Because, I gave it to a woman. Those are questions you have to pose to yourselves. Those are questions you have to talk about. Those discussion points that people a lot of times do not want to discuss.
I find that fascinating. Back to back with women are taught to discount themselves. So yeah. I will naturally ask the question.
I'm an odd duck.
Are you discounting yourself
No.
in this situation?
The truth was, I'd be negotiating for myself, and then I would have a boss come in going, well, women are bad negotiating for themselves, so I need to back Kellyn up. I was a win-win every time. I'm going to share the story with you. When I was coming in, they knew that they were going to challenge my salary at this one company. And HR did. And they said, are you married to that salary? And my response was, and I hadn't thought about this beforehand, it just popped out of my head. I said, I feel that if I didn't stick to my guns, I'd be letting down women in tech everywhere. Best response I could have ever said. Nobody asked about my salary again. No one ever. At the same time, my upcoming boss came back and said, Kellyn earned that salary. She should be getting that salary and no one should be asking her about that salary. He was there to be my ally. He had been trained to be my ally because they were doing that kind of training. I mean, this was a time when all the managers were up on top of this stuff. When they were looking for promotions, they automatically gave the title to my spouse. Even though I had already been doing the job for a year and a half, I was not given that. I was promised it, but I didn't give it. This is where you start to see that inequality start coming in. So my mentor at the company said, you earned it. Go make your boss accountable for it. So I went to my boss and I said, you're accountable for this. I've already earned it. I need to see this promotion in a year's time. And I did. I got it. He had to be my ally. That's where equality comes in and DEI programs and all this. And then we were back to even playing field. But stock awards and that are a little bit harder. They happen most of the time with nobody in the room. And it just looked cooler to give it to the girl. So that's when the inequality came out. If you didn't have those DEI programs, though, I think it would have been the opposite way. So it's more of you need to revisit that and have those discussions and say, I mean, I will tell you straight out, that's my partner down there and my equal, and he's actually been in tech longer than me. If I had won it 1 year and then he won it the next, that would have been one thing. But after 5 years that they kept giving it to me, nope, I felt that was unfair.
That's so interesting. And it's something that you only know if you're married to somebody at the same level.
We have a very odd, surreal situation. Yes, I know. Yeah.
It makes me ask the question about, those processes in general. And you're right. A lot of times it's in a closed room.
Yeah. Yep.
And we don't have access to those rooms, regardless of who's our advocate. Maybe the advocate doesn't even have access to the room.
I most of the time knew who the advocate was, and I knew who was awarding it, and I understood that. I understood that they thought it looked good to give it to me. I mean, I received a number of awards outside of that. Sometimes they were 5% of my yearly salary. Sometimes they were a computer. I mean, they're not small awards, but you recognize the pattern as you saw that. And again, ADHD, we see patterns. You saw who was being awarded what, and you recognize that it was a great achievement of understanding DEI, but there's also that backlash of DEI if you don't have honest conversations with yourself of saying, did I award this because DEI looks cool, or did I award this because I have somebody who deserved this? And that's extremely important to still follow through and keep yourself accountable.
You're talking about holding your manager accountable for the title. If we go back sort of to the beginning and parallel this conversation with losing the fear in those situations no one else wanted, did you also lose the fear of uncomfortable conversations in the work environment, like with your manager? Or is that something you got better at over time, just like you got better at your speaking?
I'm going to say that's part of my personality. My mother describes siblings in that. She said, Kellyn tells me things I don't want to know. So I think that's part of my personality.
Okay.
I have the hard conversations. Even those in the Microsoft community are aware that I'm brought into difficult conversations. I am the messenger. Even in the Microsoft community, I was the messenger in the Oracle one that they didn't want. In the Microsoft community, I'm the one that people bring in when they're like, hey, if you want this dealt with, I can bring in Kellyn and she'll deal with it. I'm the equalizer. It's weird.
Well, I think that especially if you've had a career of hard conversations and pursued them, and also understand this level of self-care that you need, so people know that, hey, there's been times when Kellyn just needed to back off on that and couldn't be the 100% advocate. Is like, sometimes the Kevlar needs to be repaired, right?
Yeah.
But having those conversations and facing that anxiety and fear is a skill that we have to develop. And it also is, maybe from a point of view of being more sure of ourselves and having power to, well, I could just go to another company or another team or another community. So people who don't necessarily feel that power aren't the ones that we should be asking to step into the line of fire, maybe. I said that too tentatively. I think I'm advocating for that fairly strongly.
It definitely takes a village when I start looking at the support that I get, as well as where I come in as, I'm going to say sometimes as the equalizer, the warrior, whatever. I get a lot of support from those that I mentor as well. Most of my mentees become friends, close friends. I get up at 6 a.m. on Thursdays and meet with one woman out of Australia every week. It's 10:30 her time. That's when we meet. Another woman, whenever she needs to talk to me, she hit me up on WhatsApp and we'll talk. Those people are also often my roommates at different events. We're friends as well. Even back in the Oracle days, I was talking like Helly, who's owning the AI space and that. I was with Mia this last week. I remember when we were in a pod, we called it these pods because we were spaced out so much and there were so few women in the Oracle community. One was in Finland, one was in New York, and I was in Colorado. And some days it was just, today sucked. This was a bad day. I just need somebody to hear me. Those are important friendships to have. Those are important support structures to have. And I think that's what women in tech more so than anything will have. So when I say that, I need support or I need, a little bit of just that structure in my life of people that connect with me. I have that. I have a lot of friends. I have a lot of allies. I have a lot of support people, and that gives me strength. I'm also naturally kind of a loner too. People know I'm kind of this weird person that I'm in the airport and I have my headphones on. Remember those Apple AirPods? I want to have a child with them. I love those Apple AirPods. And those Maxes are on my head, and I can block all noise out when I get, overstimulated from too much noise around me. When I need my time, most people know it. I'll be at an event and it's after parties, and one of my friends, Tracy, will just look at the organizer and they'll be like, Kellyn's out of quarters. She's done, and I'm not socializing with anyone. I'm just finished. And I do self-care. I'll be like, I'm going back to the room. I'm ordering food there. I'm finished. And I take care of myself. I have no guilt about taking care of myself and doing what I need. And when other people need me, I make sure I have those reserves that I can be there. I don't think there's ever been a time where I haven't been able to give of myself what other people need, because I am very big about making sure I do the self-care that I need, that I have the reserves that I need, and do step back. I would not have signed on to go back into the Oracle community if I didn't feel that I was capable of it and it was going to disturb my peace.
I think there's an emanating effect of the self-care practice that you have. You're modeling it in yourself. And by supporting these other people, you're modeling caring for them so that hopefully they can have more self-care for themselves. It's about being kind to yourself, and you, by supporting them and also supporting yourself, you're spreading that. And I really like that.
Thank you. I tell different friends, you deserve to set this boundary. This is unacceptable. And I'll point something out and they're like, you're right. I didn't even realize that, and I can see it because I try to put myself in their shoes and go, how would I feel if this was happening to me? I was taught very early on to think with my head, feel with my heart, say what I mean. Don't get any of them confused. Keep them compartmentalized, especially when you're trying to make decisions. I believe I feel things for a reason. If you're angry at somebody, there's a reason you're angry, but really think it through and figure out why you feel what you feel. I think that's extremely essential. Don't get them all meshed up together and say things that really aren't the reason for that. You have to take some time and figure it out. I'm not one to say something that I don't mean. It just doesn't happen with me. It just doesn't. I will step back and work through things. I have to. But it has served me well so far. And I'm very strategic in the way that I'm looking at things. I'm like, what does this person want to achieve? What do I want to achieve? And how do I marry those two? And how do I get past this? And it's worked very well in my favor over the years.
I think the totality of what we've covered today has just been incredible, from that self-care and advocacy. When I look back, I go, oh, that was permeating some of the perfectionism and the calibrating to time, and also part of that growth mindset and attacking, things that you were, trying to learn how to do, and joining communities and showing your work. It's been just an incredible conversation, Kellyn. I really appreciate it. Any parting thoughts, stuff that maybe we didn't cover that we should have?
I think we covered a lot here. I think people need to take that all in, especially where I come from. For my life, it's been an incredible journey for me that I ended up falling into an accidental technologist role. Folks don't understand that these opportunities are few and far between these days, that you have folks that are coming out with data science degrees, masters even, and they can't even get data analyst roles. And here I am. I came out, I was just doing desktop support, and somebody said, make a DB out of her. And then I ended up working for Oracle at one point. I've worked for Microsoft. That I've gotten the opportunities that I have been absolutely dedicated to the people that have been there and sponsored and been allyship. Even though I give myself credit for self-care and working hard and doing all these things, there's been people behind me the entire way. I could not have done it by myself. It absolutely takes a village. And I try to give that to other people. I want other people to have the things that I have had. I think that's essential for us to continue technology in a path that's healthy and happy and content. And we don't have to say, hello, AI overlords. I want us to use AI in the right way. And I see these new technologies coming in and I'm like, how are you supposed to get from not knowing anything and not having experience to getting to where I am? And I don't know how we're going to do that these days. I absolutely don't. I'm going to speak to the University of Washington in tech careers. And sometimes I don't know what I'm going to say to them. I absolutely don't know how I'm going to recommend them and how they're going to, build up what I have today that my husband and I have. We've been able to put 5 kids through college. I'm buying a second condo for one of my kids. I want other people to have that. I think that really goes back to what really the American dream's about, and tech brought it.
This is all 3 of us, supporting, people who are applying for that job that requires 8 years of experience in large language models.
Do we remember this with DevOps too? And they'd be like, you need 10 years in DevOps. And it's like, it's been out for 2.
And 25 in Kubernetes, right?
Yes, exactly. Exactly. I see these. I'm like, who wrote this?
And where can people find you, Kellyn, if they want to follow up on anything we've talked about today?
Definitely my blog, dbakevlar.com. I am all over on LinkedIn. So if you look up Kellyn Gorman on LinkedIn, I'm very easy to find there. I am on Blue Sky. Yeah, that's where you can find me.
Thanks again for spending time with us, Kellyn. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Once again, I want to say a special thank you and shout out to former guest David Cleve for suggesting Kellyn be a guest on the show. Are you doing your part to support women in technology? Here's how you can do your part with our help. I guarantee you there's a woman in technology who has a great career story that needs to be shared on this show. I want you to take a second, open up your email client, send an email to nerdjourneypodcast@gmail.com, and send me the name and contact info of a woman in technology that you'd like to nominate to be part of our show. If that person ends up saying yes and being a guest on our show, I will happily send you Nerd Journey stickers as a small token of thanks for supporting and being an ally of women in technology. Assume that she is technical and capable of breathing fire. I really love that phrase. I hadn't heard it before Kellyn mentioned it, but there are a lot of assumptions we make. And a lot of assumptions people make about women in tech, unfortunately. So I want to share a few episodes with you to provide additional color and perspective that I think complement quite nicely what Kellyn shared in the last 3 episodes with us. In episode 111, Caitlin Bryan talked about being mistaken for someone's assistant when she was actually the salesperson supporting a particular client. In episodes 117 and 118, Kate Emshoff talked about some of the subtleties for women when it came to remote interviews for new jobs. And she also gave some advice for the career-minded moms out there. In episodes 96 and 97, we talked to Ashley Connell. She talked about some of the gender imbalance in the Spiceworks community, a community that she was supporting for a time. And she also talked about the early phase of her business, the Prowess Project, and how she's helping women return to the workforce. Great episodes to go back and listen to. Then we also have episode 245 with Dr. Shirisha Kuchimanchi. She spoke about encouraging young ladies to pursue STEM careers. How can we do that better and be allies in that way? And then as far as other technical communities that might be helpful, Amy Arnold talked about in episode 281 that she's mentoring other women in network engineering, for example. And she also shared a community for women in cybersecurity that might be helpful to listeners out there. When Kellyn came back to the Oracle community, she didn't realize people cared or that they noticed the efforts that she made. I think it goes back to a comment John made during this series of interviews about not knowing how people will use the content we create, or perhaps not realizing what people might learn from us just by watching and being around us. You can't know it necessarily right then, and you might not even know it later. But if somebody was an influence on you, as Kellyn was to these other people, go share that with that person. Share something that you learned from them, that they taught you, because that is extremely encouraging to other people. And perhaps they're in the same boat where they didn't think anyone cared. And that's a hard place to be. It reminds me of a quote from Tom Hollingsworth in episode 127. It was specifically about burnout, and we didn't talk about it here, but he made this statement. Burnout isn't when you don't care anymore. It's when you don't think anyone else does. I hope you can take the lessons from this discussion with Kellyn and find the technical community that will support you the best, has good codes of conduct, and provides a real sense of encouragement so that everyone can learn. If you enjoyed this discussion, take a second and rate us 5 stars in the podcatcher of your choice and recommend us to a friend. We really appreciate it.
Farewell, listeners. Tune in next time as the journey continues. I'm John White at BJourneyman, for Nick Cordy at NetworkNerd_, signing off.
Adios.